I'm with the Oliver Creek Recovery Coalition, and we are a part of Oliver Creek in working to help people have emotional health and develop towards spiritual health. And with our series on the graves to gardens, wanting to spend a little bit of time talking about how to engage those who are dying, how to engage those in hospice care, or those that are grieving with having lost someone recently. And so first I'd like to talk about engaging those who are dying and in hospice care. Some things just to consider, like calling ahead to ask when you could come, and also go ahead and ask if there's anything you could bring, whether it's a food item or a gift. Intend to plan to stay about 15 minutes. If it's going well, the person seems to have a good amount of stamina, you can always stay longer, but you don't want to overstay or wear them down and exhaust them. When you arrive, plan to greet them as you always have, whether that's a hug or a handshake, if you're able to. Try to sit instead of standing, so that way you can be more at eye level with the patient, with the person, just being able to be in a space where you can make eye contact if they're able. And as challenging as it can be, just try to be yourself. Sometimes when we're in a situation where there's something as weighty as death, it can be challenging to feel like you can be yourself, but try to as best you can. Do take conversational cues from the person. Just let the conversation go wherever they choose for it to go. They may have a lot of emotions, whether it's anger or sadness or even fear. You can talk to them about death if they want to, or they may not talk about death and dying at all. And so they may simply talk about last night's ball game, and that's okay too. Remember that you're there to listen and to ask questions that will keep it focused on them with where they're at. And you may talk about shared memories, things that you've experienced together in the past, different aspects of life that you remember. And with that, you may end up coming across something funny. And so it's okay to laugh. It's okay for it to be a lighthearted conversation, or for it to shift back and forth from heavy to light. It's also okay to sit in silence and to just be present with them. Sometimes just simply being physically present, emotionally present, being able to hold their hand means just as much as any words you might say. And you can always ask if there's anything you can do, even if it's a small task, whatever that may be. If they're so sick, they may face away from you or close their eyes, or they may be in a state where they're unresponsive. As challenging as it can be, try not to be anxious about it. It's okay for you to talk quietly about a shared experience, or about mutual friends who are wishing them well, or even how the weather is that day. You're bringing the gift of your presence, and that's the main thing that matters. If the person is struggling with their lucidity, if they're not very lucid about the present, they may seem like they're in a different time, in a different world, it's okay to join them. You could ask questions about what they're experiencing, or you could simply reassure them that you're there with them and that they're safe and you're by their side. And if you're able to, visit more than once or in multiple ways, being in person, through phone call, maybe sending a message to someone that's caregiving that could share that with them. Don't promise to come back unless you fully intend to. Try to say what is true. And if you're realizing that you feel so uncomfortable that you're not able to visit, then it would be worth exploring that resistance and that hesitation. What feelings are you experiencing? Is there anything that's frightening you about the situation? And you may ask yourself, like, what would it take for you to be able to show up and to be present with this person who's dying? And so next, I'd like for us to talk about engaging the caregiver of a dying person. And so this person who is now caregiving for their loved one, it's going to be hard work for them. And oftentimes they're having a large amount of information that's being thrown on at them all at once. It could be real disorienting. And even for them, their whole routine of life may have changed. And so this is a big adjustment for them. And because of that, they're probably having a difficult time. Anytime we experience change, it can be difficult. And they may not even be sure of how you could help. And so you can offer small ways of helping, even if it seems insignificant. Taking their dog for a walk, answering the phone and taking messages for them, running to the grocery store to pick up some items, spending some time watching kids or whatever it may be. That may just give them one less thing to focus on for a little while. You may ask them if they have a notebook or a journal, and you could have one ready to give to them. And this may be used for them to write out thoughts, feelings, or it may just be a way for them to write down all this new information or things that are changing, such as medications and that kind of thing, just to help keep track of that. And you could offer it, give it to them, and whether they make use of it or not is okay. You may ask if they have any information on volunteer programs such as respite care. And if they don't, then be ready to offer that to them. You can ask how they're doing and if they just need someone to talk to, being open and a safe person for them to share with, knowing that caregiving is really difficult. You could ask if maybe they just need some time to go out for an hour or two for you to stay with the loved one. You may ask if there's other people who've offered to help them, and would they like for you to try to coordinate that help between you and those others that are present. And so then for you as the caregiver, as the person moves towards death, it's okay to take time to prepare yourself. If there's any lingering wounds, it's okay to go ahead and address those to try to allow there to be a moment of healing. And it's okay to talk to them about death and about what's being experienced, to ask them questions and to see if they're wanting and willing to open up about it. You may encourage them and help them practice any sort of self-care that they need. You could bring soothing music for them to listen to. You may share some of your favorite stories or memories with them. Or you may even lead them in prayer or read scripture with them. And in their last moments, as they are moving on, it's okay to let them know it's okay to go on, that they'll be okay and that you'll be okay with them moving on. And so next, engaging those who are experiencing grief. In those first moments, in those first days after the death, try not to let feelings of helplessness keep you from reaching out. Go ahead and get in touch with them as soon as you can. And sometimes the best thing to say may be nothing. It may simply be a hug, offering some sort of affection, or a simple sympathetic statement such as, "This must be so hard for you." Those can go a long way. You may ask them if they want to talk about the death, such as asking, "Do you want to talk about what happened, about how it happened?" Or you may ask if they want to talk about the funeral or any memorial service plans, and then simply listen. And if they respond in some sort of harsh or critical way, try not to take it personally. Try not to take it negatively, understanding that they are in a tough space and they're dealing with heavy things. And so then after some weeks have passed, a lot of times people will get support for the first days, the first few weeks, and then as time passes, that support starts to go back to their normal kind of life. And so if you're able to get in touch and stay in touch, that can mean a lot. You may find yourself working to encourage the person in mourning to eat well, to sleep well. You may ask them to go for a walk with you, trying to help them get up and to do some outside activities. But take your cues from the person mourning, because they may simply not be ready to yet. And it's okay to discourage them from trying to do too much. If they're trying to move too fast or if they're trying to make life-altering decisions, let them know it's okay to take things at a slow pace. And so you can try to gently encourage them in some ways, and in other ways you may be asking them to kind of step back from certain choices, certain decisions. And just remember that everybody's grief work, it takes time. and every person has a unique timetable. And so, as they do begin to return to social activities, it's okay to acknowledge the death, but also not to dwell on it. And again, if they respond in any sort of negative way, try not to take it personally, just being understanding of where they're at. And then maybe it's been a few months or it's even approaching a year from that death. A lot of times people will experience heavy amounts of grief in that year anniversary or around other dates like a birthday. And so just try to be present and listen with them. Even if it seems like they're still crying about something that you feel like it's been a while, let them have their tears, let them have their emotions. And if they're talking and then they take long pauses, try to just sit pleasantly with them in that silence, just letting them have that space. And try to resist the urge to relate this death to your own experience. Instead, talk about the deceased and your memories of the deceased or the mourner's memories. And sometimes we try to empathize by saying, like, yeah, that's how it felt when my grandparent passed away, when this happened to me. And we mean it to be empathetic or sympathetic, but it almost takes the shift off of the person and puts it on ourselves, and that's not what we want. So instead, if you're wanting to convey some degree of understanding, just try to name the emotion or the experience, such as, that must be so sad. I know this is so heavy for you, that your heart is aching. I'm so sorry that you're experiencing this. That can be much more supportive than bringing up your own experience related to a similar kind of loss. Know that it's okay to use the deceased's name, to use the past tense, and to even use words like dead, death, died. But some people aren't ready to hear that, and so take your cues from the person mourning. And remember, try not to take any harsh responses negatively. And so finally, what not to say. Try to not say everything will be okay. Because of Jesus, it's true, like things can be okay, but that's not how it feels in the moment. And that has a tendency to try to almost like minimize the pain or the emotions, when really we just need to be present with them in that pain. Try to avoid saying things like, it's for the best, or this must be God's will, because that can lead to a whole lot of questions that we don't have the answer to. We don't always understand why things happen the way they do. And sometimes that statement of this must be God's will or this is for the best just hits at the wound instead of really helping to ease it. Saying things like they're in a better place now. And maybe they are, but if I am missing them, I want them here with me. Even though I may be glad that they're in a better place, there's still this pain of them not being present with me here. Avoid saying, look at what you have to be thankful for. There is a place and a time for gratitude, and it can be very helpful. But when we're experiencing heavy emotions, that is not the moment for it. Avoid saying, I know what you're feeling. Maybe you understand sadness and you have a similar grief, but try to acknowledge their emotion. Show your understanding of what they're feeling by just being with them and knowing that they're having a tough time. They may be holding themselves together well, and you might want to say something like, oh, you're doing so well, but they may just be masking. They may be trying to put on that brave face, and so instead of pointing that out and reinforcing that that's what they need to do, just try to be present, even if they're holding their composure, and know that it's tough for them. And the call if you need anything, it's easy to say that, and it's easy to mean it, but it can mean a lot to the person if you offer to do something specific. Can I bring you dinner on this night? Is there anything I can pick up at the grocery store for you and drop off? Anything like that can mean much more to them, and it keeps them from having to figure out what they might need, because a lot of times they're not going to know because they're just trying to get it from moment to moment. So I hope that some of these thoughts and ideas are helpful for you, that you can take these and then be a better presence for those who are struggling with grief.